The UFC has scheduled several matchups over the years. A good majority of them have came to fruition, but then there's some matchups that have not came to fruition, and some matchups that haven't came to fruition more than once. Matchups that were scheduled, canceled, rescheduled, canceled again, as if they were cursed. Like some matchups that just don't seem like they're meant to be and that just aren't in the cards to ever happen. And in this video, I want to talk about top 7 cursed UFC fights. Starting at number 7, Cody No Love Garbrandt versus Ronnie Yahya. Now, this is a funny one because you'd think a guy like Ronnie Yahya seemed like a safe and winnable comeback fight for Cody Garbrandt. At this stage in his career, with Cody being 1-5 in his last 6 fights and 4 of his 5 losses being by way of KO, I mean, this is a matchup that this is an opponent that the UFC tried to give Cody as like a safe fight, someone that Cody can actually beat to get him back in the win column. Because think about it, Ronnie Yahya is just a grappler, a jiu-jitsu fighter with terrible striking, no power threat. Cody Garbrandt has great takedown defense to hold off any takedown attempts of Ronnie and has a massive athletic advantage, striking advantage, and overall power advantage. It just seemed like stylistically that matchup was in Cody's favor. And it's been scheduled 2 times in July of this year. But Ronnie Yahya pulled out. They tried again in October. And again, Ronnie Yahya pulled out. And ever since, the UFC has not bothered trying to reschedule that matchup. They just left that one alone, which is tough luck for Cody Garbrandt because, again, it just seemed like this was a safe, winnable fight that could have got Cody back in the win column. And because of this fight being canceled 2 times, Cody Garbrandt has not fought at all this year because the UFC couldn't get him a replacement. But now he's fighting in 2023 in March against Julio Arce. Good luck to Cody Garbrandt. Hopefully he can get it done against Julio, because if he can't, then yeah, Garbrandt is absolutely done. Moving on to number 6. Santiago Ponzinibbio versus Ruthless Robbie Lawler. This is a fight that's been scheduled twice over the course of 3 years. The first time it was scheduled in 2019 of December, but Santiago Ponzinibbio withdrew from the bout, and that was actually the beginning of the series of like health issues that sidelined Ponzinibbio from the octagon for like a few years. And now he's been active again since 2021. And in 2022, literally 3 years exactly to the date, Lawler and Ponzi were originally supposed to fight. They tried again for December 2022. But this time it was Robbie Lawler's turn. This time, Robbie Lawler literally pulled out on fight week when training camp should have been done. And somehow, literally on like a Monday, Lawler pulls out with some mysterious injury, and this fight yet again failed to happen, which it's probably best for Robbie Lawler that it didn't happen because Lawler is washed up. He's coming off a knockout loss, and Ponzinibbio is really dangerous. Bad matchup for Lawler, but at the same time, this fight could have been a banger, but it is what it is. I mean, this is a fight we really didn't need to see at the end of the day, because it was never really a good time for this matchup to happen, in all honesty, because Ponzi probably was going to send Lawler on a losing streak. All right, number 5, Jim Miller versus Bobby Green. This matchup was actually booked 3 times. Once in 2014, it was canceled, and then they tried again in 2021, UFC 258 in February. And I think Bobby Green pulled out of the matchup. I'm not necessarily sure. But yeah, didn't happen. Then they tried again in 2022, July, UFC 276. Bobby Green pulls out. So for some mysterious reason, this matchup was not meant to be. And honestly, this definitely could have been a really good fight. You know, style-wise, these two match up very well against each other. Could have made for a banger. It kind of sucks that we never saw it, and we probably never will see it, given how many times this fight's been canceled. Seems like it's just not supposed to happen. All right, number 4, Leon Rocky Edwards versus Hamzat Borz Chimaev. This one is crazy. This is another fight that's been booked 3x. In all 3x, it has never happened. And this fight was kind of booked at sort of an unfortunate time. During the world pandemic in its strongest stages, in its early stages, when literally everyone was getting COVID and fights were being canceled because people were catching the virus. That's the story of this matchup. It was first booked in December 2020, but Leon Edwards got the virus. They rescheduled for January 2021, but this time Chimaev got the virus. And instead of getting Leon a replacement, they postponed the bout to March. But Chimaev was not fully recovered. So they canceled that, and instead they did Bilal Muhammad versus Leon Edwards on March 13th, which that situation was an absolute mess because Leon waited like 2 years to come back, only just to come back and have the fight end in such an anticlimactic fashion with the whole eye poke. The fight ending to an eye poke and ending in a no contest, which sucks. But in the long run, Leon's bad luck did run out because he earned himself a title shot and became the world champion. And who knows, maybe there's a chance this matchup could still happen down the line. Now that Leon Edwards is the champion and Chimaev is in the top 3 of this division, it's not impossible that this fight could happen. Maybe Chimaev down the line could earn himself a title shot, and maybe Leon by then could still be the welterweight champion, making his defense against Khamzat Chimaev. You know, timing is honestly everything, and I think the first 3 times they tried to make this matchup wasn't a good time because, you know, Chimaev wasn't ranked, and it was a risky fight for Leon, who was in the top 3, nothing to gain. So maybe the circumstances worked out better. I hope we do get to see it in the future. Number 3, Rafael dos Anjos versus Islam Makhachev. This fight was put together 3 times. They were supposed to fight in 2020 at UFC 254, but RDA pulled out. They rescheduled it for a fight night headliner in November 2020, but Islam fell ill. So RDA got lucky, and he got to, you know, return to the lightweight division with a win and get ranked in the top 10, top 7, because if Islam made it, then I don't think RDA would have been ranked in the lightweight division. He would have lost his first fight back to the lightweight division in years. So he caught a break there, but they tried to make that fight again for UFC 267 in Abu Dhabi, the same location they tried the first time. But RDA once again pulled out. Like, they both took turns pulling out on each other as if this fight it isn't supposed to happen. And it sucks because these two had a good rivalry going on. They both really wanted that fight. There was a good storyline there because Khabib dominated RDA back in the day, and RDA wanted to get one back against one of Khabib's, you know, buddies, but never got a chance to. And it's probably best it never happened because we know how RDA does against dominant wrestlers. He always fumbles, and I don't think he would have done any better against Islam. So it's probably best that this fight never happened. It seemed like Allah was kind of protecting Dos Anjos. All right, number 2. This one might be surprising for some because this wasn't really a big fight or an important matchup, but it was booked literally 5 freaking times and never happened. Matt Chanel versus Alex Perez in the flyweight division. This fight was supposed to happen at UFC 262 in Texas in 2021, canceled. They tried again late August 2021, canceled. They tried early September, canceled. They tried again in December. It got canceled in the weigh-ins because I can't remember who missed weight. It was either Chanel or Perez. But yeah, then they tried again for UFC 271, I believe, in February 2022. And again, weigh-ins day, the fight gets canceled because one of them missed weight, which is it's insane how many times this fight got canceled and rescheduled. And because of the amount of times this fight was, scheduled, it kept Alex Perez out of action for nearly 2 years, because I believe if he was booked against anyone else, the fight would have happened because it wouldn't have been cursed, and we might have seen Perez in action in 2021. But he had a 2-year layoff just to come back and, get folded by Alejandro Pantoja. Tough luck for Matt Chanel, or tough luck for Alex Perez, I mean. Although tough luck for Chanel too, because he got folded in his last fight. All right, number 1. This is the big one. I'm sure everyone's familiar with this one. Khabib versus Ferguson. This matchup right here was literally the definition of curse with the amount of times this fight was canceled and rescheduled. The UFC tried making this fight from 2015 to 2020. For 5 years, the UFC tried their best, and it just kept falling apart. And both Khabib and Tony, they both took turns pulling out on each other, and it was ridiculous. And literally each time this matchup, got scheduled, canceled, rescheduled, this fight only became a bigger deal, and it became more and more anticipated each time, which really sucks for the fans because matchup-wise, style-wise, this matchup seemed very interesting because Khabib had never fought anyone with a ground game threat along with the striking threat. Khabib has been used to fighting strikers who can't threaten him on the ground, but Tony Ferguson was dangerous in both dimensions. He had his awkward, unique, tricky style, insane 5-round cardio, dangerous elbows. It just seemed like a prime Tony could have been a problem for Khabib Nurmagomedov, but us fans never got a chance to see if Tony could be a Khabib kryptonite or if Khabib would have just continued his reign of dominance over Tony El Cucuy Ferguson. Which, in all likelihood, he probably would have, but who knows? Anything can happen. It is a crazy sport, and on paper, a prime Tony definitely posed some interesting challenges to Khabib Nurmagomedov, and it never made sense why this fight wasn't meant to be, because the matchup, it made sense to happen. The more and more it got scheduled, it just seemed like it was the perfect time, The first 2 times it didn't matter. There were just 2 prospects on the come up who weren't very well known. But then when they got the chance to fight for the interim title, both guys developed some fan bases. Everyone knew who they were. And it just seemed like these 2 were like the best outside of whoever had the belt, whether it be Alvarez or Conor McGregor. Both guys were seen as the uncrowned champs while Conor McGregor was sitting on his ass for 2 years. But while we were waiting for Conor, we were also waiting for Khabib versus Tony, and it still couldn't happen. Couldn't happen for an interim belt. Tony then fought for the interim title against Kevin Lee. When Khabib pulled out, he won the interim belt off Kevin Lee. Then he was supposed to defend his interim belt against Khabib. And the winner of that was going to come out the undisputed champion. But check this. Tony trips over a freaking wire. Of all ways this fight could have been canceled, Tony trips over a wire, bangs up his knee, and of course it doesn't happen. So Khabib beats Al Iaquinta for the vacant lightweight title instead of Tony, which would have been a bigger win. Then both guys literally fought on the same night, same card, but just not against each other because this fight was sacrificed for Khabib versus McGregor. Then they tried one last time 2 years later in April 2020. But 5th time was not a charm because they rescheduled it at literally the most unfortunate time, which was the beginning of the world pandemic, which led to this fight being canceled. It was the death of Khabib versus Tony for good because Khabib got locked up in Russia, and Tony Ferguson took the Gaethje fight, and he lost to Justin Gaethje. There goes his 12-fight win streak, and when Khabib came back, he fought Justin Gaethje and then retired. And then since then, Tony went on a losing streak. He fell off after losing to Justin Gaethje. And we never got the fans' wet dream. That was Khabib versus Ferguson. And us fans are forever haunted by that mystery. And it just seems like that matchup was forbidden from Allah himself. That matchup was sacred from ever happening. And it's just left up to the imagination of us fans to speculate on who would have won rather than just seeing it with our own eyes to actually find out the answers, which is really unfortunate, but it is what it is. That's a wrap for my top 7 cursed UFC fights. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more content. Peace out.